Hello, this is my media literacy lesson plan. So let's begin. I went and found this lesson on the oercommons.org website, and the title was Two Truths and a Lie Online, Media Literacy for Young Adults. And so my lesson is geared towards young adults. It would definitely be too difficult for the younger grades to complete on their own. So my lesson is based around this lesson. It's not exactly the same, but it is has a lot of the same activities and aspects. My Common Core alignment, so these are my standards that I chose. The first one says to integrate and evaluate multiple sources of information presented in different media or formats, as well as in words, in order to address a question or solve a problem. And then the second one says to determine an author's point of view or purpose in a text in which the rhetoric is particularly effective, analyzing how styles and content contribute to the power, persuasiveness, or beauty of the text. I think those both really apply to the lesson that we're about to go over. My objectives were, I had three of them, so the first one says that students will be able to determine if information online is trustworthy, and they're going to be doing this by using the CRAP test, the CRAAP test. The second one says that students will be able to determine whether information they located is factual enough to use for a school assignment. And the third one says that students will be able to critically evaluate online resources so that they can be both an informed consumer and producer of digital content. All right, so the materials that you will need for this lesson are the embedded video clips that I've already added, student Chromebooks, they'll each need a Chromebook, Google Slides, Google Classroom, and then, of course, internet access. And I just added a little clip art of all the different Google Workspace things that you may need for this lesson. All right, so here is the opening/introduction of my lesson. I decided to start out with the same way that the lesson I found started out with. I shortened it down just a little bit, but so I'm starting with a random fun fact. Before I even introduce what exactly we're going to be learning about today, I'm just telling my kids a random fun fact. So it says that I was Googling and I found that there's this new creature that I've never heard of before, and it's called a house hippo. And then I give these three facts about this house hippo, and they're, abnormal facts, and it's like something that you've never heard of before, and it's supposed to get the kids questioning and thinking, like, is this actually true information? And so I added a photo of just a random hippo, and then we're going to go on and we're going to think, hopefully after I read those facts, kids will be questioning if that's really true. And so the next slide says, hang on a second, is that really true? And so we're going to have a discussion here. We're going to pause and talk. Do we think house hippos are real? And then I will go into explaining that sometimes we find it easy to believe whatever we read on the internet without fact-checking first, and that this can be a huge mistake if we're ever using fake news on the internet. And then I'll go into telling them what today's lesson actually is about. It's not about house hippos, it's actually about learning to go online and research and then determine if a source that we find is actually factual or if it's going to be fake news. And so we're going to determine whether or not something is good enough to use in an assignment or if it needs to we need to move on and find something else. All right, so here's the body of the lesson. And I started with just a question. So the question says, have you ever researched for a school assignment? And then just use whatever facts popped up first. Like you type something in and then the first thing pops up, you click on. And I'm going to have students either raise their hand, but I might even have them come up and, click yes or no. So they're getting out of their seat if they're guilty of this mistake. And then, I'll of course say that's okay. Everyone makes that mistake. And then we'll move on. And we'll really talk about how we need to determine whether a source is factual or if it's fake news. So this is where the CRAP test is going to come in. And if you click this link right here, I've got a video that attaches explaining all about this test and the steps students need to take when they find an article in order to see if it is factual enough for their use, or if it's not. And this is a really, really good resource for students to use each time they find a resource that they would like to use. Moving on, we go down to, now this slide just says why we need to fact check, which is obviously important to share with them. It says when you start thinking about writing an assignment, you go to Google, you find a web page, and you just kind of start reading. And then you start thinking about, how do I know if this information is really trustworthy? And the fact is that many websites we seek out, they purposely will promote false information, which can make it really hard for us to determine whether it's factual or not. And that's why it's so important to use that CRAP test. And this link right here is just a funny video clip about how rumors can get started and how fake news can really get started, that I think students would really enjoy and laugh at. All right, and now we're going to go into modeling. So I've just got one slide for this, and it doesn't have really any information on it, but this is just a picture which also has a link to a fake news article. And so for modeling on this section, we're going to look at this article together, and we're going to go through the CRAP test and determine if this is fake news or not. And so you can click on the article, and it's going to bring you up this article all about these reasons that Reese's peanut butter cups are bad for you and why you should stop eating them, and all this stuff. And so we're going to go through the CRAP test and figure out if this article is true or if it's false. And we'll do all of that together. And then guided practice. This is where I'm going to let the students kind of work by themselves, but we're going to come back together and discuss. So individually, I'm going to have them go online. They're going to find 3 online artifacts. So that can be a blog post, a photo, a video, animation, podcast, social media account, and they're going to log on to our Google Classroom, and it's gonna be labeled 2 truths and a lie assignment, and they're gonna go in there and they're gonna post 2 online artifacts that are factual, and then they're gonna find 1 that is fake news, but they're not gonna tell their classmates which is which. And then their classmates' goal is to go and find and determine which one is fake using the CRAP test. And so when they finish their post, then they're supposed to go down to their classmates' post. They're going to go through them, read them, fact check them, and then comment which one they think was the fake news post. And then when we finish, I would have a few students get up and share if they wanted to, and we'll discuss all together all of the articles that were posted. And this may take a few days. This might not be a lesson that happens all in one day, because that might take a while. All right, so for independent practice, this is something they're going to do completely on their own. I added 2 new articles, and so this is their time to do it completely on their own. No partners, no, I'm not helping them. They're doing this on their own. So students can't share answers on Google Classroom. They are going to post it on Google Classroom, but they cannot see each other's answers. So they're going to click on these 2 different articles, just like this, and they're going to fact check them using the CRAP test, and they're going to see, are the articles true or are they fake news? And there's 2 of those. And when students finish, they'll go through, submit their answers to Google Classroom, and that's a way for me to go and check later as well. And then for my closing, we're really just going to discuss. We're going to talk about what we learned, the importance of fact checking, and I'm going to let them discuss with the people around them and not just with me. So it's going to be like a whole class discussion. What did we learn? What do we still want to learn? And if you enjoyed it, and we're just going to kind of wrap up the lesson with what we learned and a short discussion. For my assessment and evaluation, really, I'm just going to be checking Google Classroom, checking to see if they're logging their comments for independent practice and guided practice assignments, and then also just, using that observation checklist, making sure that they're engaged, they're discussing, and they're with me during all those parts of the lesson. And then my modifications and differentiation. This is, I had a few different ideas for this part. So all students are going to be provided with a Chromebook, internet access, Google Classroom, links, videos, etc. So none of that would need to be modified because that's all going to be available at school. The second one says, but if there was a student who could not get a Chromebook for whatever reason, they could look over their neighbor's shoulder and work with their neighbor. Same thing if a student had an impairment where they were unable to use a Chromebook, they would also get to work with a neighbor or me individually. And then I also put if a student does not feel comfortable sharing or discussing in front of their class, they could always, I would always give them that option to share what they learned during that closing time with me privately. And that completes my lesson of